Welcome, Bruce and Brucefiends. My name's Albrecht von Stalin, and today I'm gonna be reviewing episode 10 of Taishou Otome Otogibanashi. This episode is quite something else, I tell you what. Before things collapse in around me, let's go! I finished a video about Minecraft a few days ago, and I have a certain project for this week. Let's just say it involves a church. Immediately, something is quite off, although this is not with the episode itself, but with the subtitles. Normally, the title of the show and the episode title would have subtitles, but these are not present here. Funimation is being sloppy here. Either this is a problem that came with rendering the episode at Funimation's end, or that the people in charge of placing the subtitles in Funimation had forgotten to place those in some scenes. And there's more than a few of these. We see Tamahiko writing to his uncle Tamasuke on his life in Chiba. Last time that we saw this was in episode 8, when Tamahiko was writing to his uncle about going back to school. In this one, we see Tamahiko writing about how it's currently summer break in school and how he's been able to help the village kids. He also mentions how his classmate Hakuryu has been visiting him lately. This is essentially a bit of a flashback to the last couple of episodes, and it paints a peaceful picture of his life. Tamahiko notices that Yuzuki is happy because Yuzuki has received a letter from her friend Midori. We get a montage of Yuzuki blushing and being surprised. I swear, the way she is drawn whenever she does this type of face is too cute. At the end, we see another case of Funimation being sloppy. There should have been a subtitle on the bottom text area saying, "What should I do?" A fitting question given Funimation being sloppy. After this, Tamahiko asks what's going on, and Yuzuki says that Midori is pregnant and about to get married to a newspaper journalist. I'll be coming back to this later as it's something quite controversial. While Yuzuki explains this, we see another scene of the missing subtitles. There should have been something below the fret fret sound effect. I hate to nitpick over this, but this is Funimation we're talking about here. They're supposed to be the professionals, not amateurs. Sadly, we're gonna see a couple more of these cases later on. Yuzuki says that while Midori should have married her, and I mean Midori's man, before getting Midori pregnant, Yuzuki is still happy for Midori, complete with Yuzuki explaining how Midori is her friend ever since middle school. I'll also be explaining why is it that Yuzuki had apparently dropped out of middle school later, as it's also very controversial, especially nowadays. After this, Yuzuki tells Tamahiko that Midori is in Tokyo before going to Midori's fiance's place in Kyushu. Tamahiko convinces Yuzuki to visit her friend. Yuzuki asks if Tamahiko if he's gonna be alright, and he tells her that she should see Midori. And yet another one of the no subs. Funimation, what are you doing? Tamahiko says that he's not a kid anymore, which should have shown up before telling Yuzuki that he's gonna be alright for a week or two. In order to reassure Yuzuki, Tamahiko brings Yuzuki to a local Shinto shrine. The two of them pray in there before Yuzuki tells Tamahiko that they should go back there once she's expecting their own baby. Tamahiko blushes and buys an omamori. These amulets are bought at Shinto shrines and are said to provide luck or protection to the person who's wearing it. Giving someone an omamori is a physical form of well-wishing to someone. What Tamahiko had bought for Yuzuki as a gift for Midori is an anzan. This type of omamori is used to provide protection to pregnant women. And yes, these are still around to this day. Later, Yuzuki and Tamahiko are at the train station. Yuzuki is well dressed, and then two of them are having a lovey-dovey moment before Yuzuki tells Tamahiko about food. She tells Tamahiko that since she's away, she's asked Ryo for help with the food. This made me wonder. This is 1923, right? So why does Tamahiko not have a refrigerator at his place? As it turns out, there were already fridges in Japan at the time. But these would not be mainstream until the 1950s with the post-war reconstruction that happened there and elsewhere. We get a flashback of how Yuzuki had asked Ryo for help. While Ryo is shocked that Yuzuki asks her for help, Yuzuki tells Ryo that she used to have an older sister, but said older sister had died when she was little. In the manga, Yuzuki had mentioned that her older sister had died because she had gotten bitten by a rat and died due to the illness caused by it. Yuzuki then says that she treats Ryo as a kind and dependable older sister figure. She bases this on the fact that Ryo takes care of her younger brothers. Ryo accepts and pokes fun at Yuzuki by saying that she's gonna steal Tamahiko before laughing. Ryo has gone a long way from being a fling type character from episode 6 to being a dependable older sister type character by this episode. I'll be talking about her more later. Before she leaves for Tokyo, Yuzuki asks Tamahiko to kiss her, but seeing as this is in public, he pats her head instead. I love wholesome scenes like this. She mentions that once she returns, she's gonna be preparing a feast for his birthday. With that, Yuzuki boards the train and leaves for Tokyo. Upon arrival, Yuzuki sees Midori and they're both happy about it. The two of them had gone into a cafe where Midori explains what had happened. That she got pregnant by her fiancé and how her fiancé decided to take responsibility by promising her relatives that he'll marry her and make their family happy. Midori is blushing about it when she had asked Yuzuki on how Tamahiko has been treating her. Yuzuki says yes before giving Midori the onzon. Again, Funimation? There should have been a subline here which talks about, oh, this is from Tamahiko. This is the last time that Funimation decided to be sloppy in this episode, and I'll go after this later as well. Midori says her thanks, and Yuzuki blushes while talking about Tamahiko before they ended up laughing. They decided to stay at Midori's Tokyo apartment as her fiancé is sleeping at the office tonight. We see them singing and a montage of them spending some time with each other. The two of them talk about their plans for the future and how Tamahiko is not marrying Yuzuki yet, as Tamahiko is not ready yet to do so. The next day, they go out and walk around Tokyo. Yuzuki mentions that the weather is fitting for early September. Midori says that she's happy to meet Yuzuki and that she can get married now. We now go to Tamahiko's place where he tutors Yamato and Keta. These two are two of Ryo's younger brothers. Ryo shows up with the lunch that she had made for the four of them. Tamahiko mentions that Ryo treats him like a younger brother, and Ryo mentions that today is the day when Yuzuki goes home. She teases Tamahiko a little when their table started to shake. The Great Kanto Earthquake. We then see a scene where a village has been flattened with smoke and fire coming out of it. Chiba is now in flames. Tamahiko, Ryo, Yamato, and Keta had gone to Chiba. Upon seeing that one of his students' houses had collapsed with their grandma still inside, Tamahiko tries to lift away the debris with his one good hand but fails. The other villagers decided to do it by themselves as Tamahiko can't do it. Upon seeing the devastation of Chiba, Tamahiko worries that the same has happened to Tokyo, where Yuzuki is, and goes home worrying. His house was partly damaged but it's still standing. Tamahiko is feeling guilty as it was he who told Yuzuki to go to Tokyo and now he knows not what has happened to her. One aftershock with Haru meowing later, and Tamahiko goes to Yuzuki's room. The small cat goes to Tamahiko and he notices that Yuzuki had left something for him. He reads the letter and it says that she had left him a gift. 2 pairs of gloves and 2 matching scarves for the both of them. With that, Tamahiko is happy and eats a caramel candy. He's learned well from Gundam Age's Chocobar Commander, Stoller Guavaran. Gundam reference aside, he remembers that Yuzuki is strong enough to survive whatever chaos that the earthquake brings. Yuzuki is best girl, and Tamahiko is best boy. Tamahiko decides to transform into Gigachad. With that, he feeds Haru the small cat, prepares rice balls, writes a note, and leaves his house complete with a montage of Yuzuki. He leaves for Tokyo and the episode ends. This episode follows chapters 15, 16, and 17 from the manga. I will not be talking about the Great Kanto Earthquake here just yet because that's for next week's review. This is because we haven't really seen what has happened to Tokyo yet. Now I'll be talking about Midori's pregnancy. In our day and age where it's extremely normal for people to just go for hookups rather than have actual relationships, a lot of people tend to treat the kids who are formed from it as accidents at best and do just about everything to prevent having babies, including abortion. Seeing Midori's fiancé take responsibility for what he and Midori had done is quite refreshing because here we see people who had decided to embrace life instead of doing what our modern society prefers, hookups and contraception. I'm also gonna go after Funimation here. This studio is known for making decent English language subs and dubs of anime whenever it's not some political statement for the terminally online social media wokey crowd. Seeing them not put the proper subtitles 5 times in an episode is just sloppy. I expect Funimation, an anime dub and sub studio known for doing decent work, to do better. There's also the matter of how Midori and Yuzuki had stopped their education after middle school. Is this because the Japanese were sexist a century ago? Hardly. We've already seen Tamako study to become a doctor under her uncle Tamaski's supervision, and we have Tamahiko along with Hakaru studying in high school. This is not due to some gender biases of that generation, but simply due to economic status. Back then, the Japanese education system had merged high school and college into higher education. This means that after 3 years of high school, he or she can go to college. Since education even back then tends to be expensive, this meant that only people in the upper classes were able to go to high school and college. If you are poor, your options were to either get an apprenticeship so that you can get into a job later on, or try to get a job immediately. For women, there's another option, getting married. And since the age of consent for women in Japan back then was 15 years old, this was a viable option. Nowadays, both sexes are able to attend high school and college due to educational and economic reforms. Now, I'm gonna talk about Ryo again. I'm happy that she had not become a fling-type character like in a Filipino kabitserye. The problem is that a lot of women and men who are in these flings tend to be one-dimensional and cliché. Ryo manages to avoid all of that completely by simply being an older sister figure to both Tamahiko and Yuzuki. I get where she was coming from in episodes 5, 6, and her origin part in episode 7. She wants her family to live a better life, and she was willing to do anything to do so. That being said, she realized that what she did was wrong, and so she apologized to Yuzuki in episode 7. I like her character development here because not only did she avoid becoming a one-note character, she also became a well-written character. Tamahiko becoming a Gigachad is something to behold. He had already become a Chad in episode 7 by improving himself, and now that he's becoming a Gigachad by looking for Yuzuki, I'll have to say that Tamahiko had truly become a man among men. I had mentioned in one of my previous videos, which I'll link in the description below, that Tamahiko is becoming one of the more competent men in anime, and this episode proves it. I recommend this episode especially because it shows a healthy take on masculinity. Come join me next week as I'll be reviewing episode 11. Please like, share, and subscribe.